Your first page is arguably the most important in your entire novel. It's where the reader or a literary agent makes a crucial decision. Do I keep reading or do I put this down? When I'm editing authors' manuscripts, we spend more time workshopping the first page than any other part of the novel. It has to pull the reader in and give them no choice but to turn to the next page and the next and the next. But that's much easier said than done. And how do you know if your first page is working? From editing hundreds of novels over my career, including New York Times bestsellers, I've created a foolproof formula to nail your first page. I'll reveal the 4 critical elements every first page needs, and then I'll review real manuscripts submitted by all of you to see if they pass my first page test. The first element I look for serves as the story's emotional anchor: the person. In almost all cases, we should meet an important character on the first page, typically the protagonist. But your first page has to do more than just mention this character. You have to make us feel something about them: curiosity, empathy, excitement. The question I'm really asking on the first page is this: am I interested in following this character for the rest of the book? Do I want to learn more about them? If the answer is no, then you'll lose me. You definitely won't have room to give us your entire character's life story on page 1, but you should give us a glimpse of their worldview, personality, or emotional landscape. That might show up in a surprising observation they make, a snarky internal reaction, or a line of dialogue that displays their voice. Show us a spark of their humanity that makes them feel real and unique. Even one specific, vivid moment on page 1 will go a long way to kickstart our emotional connection to them. The second element involves how the story is being told and the specific words you're choosing: the prose. Readers and literary agents can tell on page 1 whether they're reading the work of a skilled writer or an amateur. I'm looking for writing that flows effortlessly, that stays grounded in the chosen point of view, and that demonstrates that the author is in control of their craft. Your prose is how you build your trust with your reader. Writing that feels scattered or has a lot of technical issues will start to erode that trust, and it'll be hard to convince your reader to stick around. Your prose doesn't have to be ornate or lyrical unless that's your style, but it does have to be clear, confident, and suitable for the genre. Here's how I think about it. If I can effortlessly follow the story without thinking about the technical aspects of the writing, that's a great sign the author is doing their job. Because the second I notice issues with dialogue, or stumble over a bunch of fragments or run-ons, or find a description that's super difficult to parse, my immersion in the story is broken. I start to look at the words on the page rather than the story being told inside them. Voice is something that you'll hear a lot of agents talk about looking for in manuscripts that are submitted to them. I have a whole other video that talks about how to find your writing voice, so watch that if you want to level up your craft on a line level. The third element I'm looking for on the first page is the difference between a bland opening and an absolutely brilliant one: the problem. This is the one that so many writers skip, but it's essential. Your first page needs some form of tension, something unresolved that makes the reader beg to see it play out. This is because our brains are literally hardwired to seek resolution, so any unfinished business keeps us hooked. The problem on your opening page doesn't have to be big or dramatic or an explosion. It can be subtle, but something should feel unsettled because that will set the plot in motion. Maybe the protagonist is arriving somewhere they really don't want to be. Maybe they're debating a huge decision, or maybe they're reacting to a troubling comment. Introducing a problem is what gives your story momentum. So as you read back through your opening page, ask, what problem do I establish? Have I created a sense of movement and urgency? Finally, the last key element of a strong opening page is probably the one you haven't thought about at all: the promise. This is your contract with the reader, and it's deceptively simple, but I want you to be honest with yourself right here, right now. Do you give the reader something to continue reading for? If you've done your job nailing the other 3 Ps, the person, the prose, and the problem, then the promise should already be embedded in your opening page. But it's still worth defining what exactly your promise is, because if you don't make any promise to the reader, then you're giving them no reason to care about the story or to turn to the next page. If you're having trouble nailing down your promise, use this exercise to reverse engineer it. Read through your first page, then write down all the questions that your reader will have. Now, which one carries the most weight in your novel? Which one relates to the main conflict that we will explore? It could be something like, who is the killer, or what will happen to their marriage? That's the question that you're promising to answer, and it should be threaded through the rest of the story beyond the first page. Now that you know the 4 Ps, let's see them in action. I'm going to review the first pages of 3 manuscripts submitted to me by my subscribers to see if they pass the 4 criteria in my first page test. Quick note before we get going, when I'm looking at just the first page in isolation, my critiques are obviously very limited in scope. Even if the first page is amazing, the story could fall apart on the next one. And even if the first page is weak, the rest of the story could get better and better. So this first page test is not at all meant to be an indication of the quality or potential of these novels overall. Rather, just a test of how these authors are hooking the reader into the story. All of the manuscripts I selected for today's test are thrillers because I love them, and because the first page in a suspense novel has to be filled with tension, so they're typically pretty exciting. Let's dive into the first manuscript, which is a psychological thriller. Invitation was the first word that came to mind when people thought about Thames Wood Crescent. It was difficult to point out exactly how the neighborhood encompassed such an open arms feel. Still, many would credit it to the picturesque aesthetic that stretched from end to end of its bleached concrete sidewalk. It was Wednesday, and with noon fast approaching, the typical suburban silence would not seem out of place. This made the ruckus that had shoehorned its way into the calm all the more noticeable, and as the crowd grew more aggressive with each passing second, hurling profanities and chanting in unison, it was becoming increasingly more difficult for Evelyn Spinster to ignore the consequences of her actions. An eye for an eye makes the world go blind. An eye for an eye makes the world go blind. People are not property. People are not property. The horde of protesters roared this motto on a loop, with the words taunting Evelyn's ears like the hot breath of a hungry beast, ready to devour her at any moment. She wasn't sure how much more she could take. The pit in her stomach was deepening so rapidly that any thought of intervening was soon lost in its endless abyss. Pacing back and forth in her living room, she tried to focus on the metronomic ticking of her grandfather clock, as she knew that once it rang 12, they would be here, and they would surely put an end to the commotion. Something that, at this point, she would have happily given her life for. Okay, let's run this manuscript by my first page test, starting with the person. We do get a character introduced on this opening page, Evelyn Spinster, though she's not mentioned until the end of the second paragraph. Clearly, she did something wrong because she's dealing with the consequences of her actions. And the author hints at some troubling backstory that I want to know more about. So I'd say that it checks this box. Now let's look at the prose. The first thing I noticed about this manuscript was the POV. The first 2 paragraphs are written in more of an omniscient narration because we are looking at the neighborhood from a bird's eye view and getting general commentary about it. Then by paragraph 4, we zoom into Evelyn's perspective when we get this really nice line. The horde of protesters reared this motto on a loop with the words taunting Evelyn's ears like the hot breath of a hungry beast, ready to devour her at any moment. Now we're in Evelyn's mind and body, feeling what she's feeling, and I love the imagery here. But I wonder if this entire scene might be more effective if we were brought into Evelyn's mind and body from the very beginning. If this omniscient style narration that we see in the first 2 paragraphs isn't sustained throughout the rest of the novel, and we really just follow Evelyn in close third person, then I would definitely recommend revising so that we start in Evelyn's point of view and we stick with her throughout. That'll make the narrative more consistent and fluid and smooth. And because she's experiencing such an emotionally intense moment, you're going to bring that to the forefront and make the reader connect with it from the start. Versus right now, it takes a few paragraphs to really warm us up and bring us into what she's feeling. I see a lot of novels that use this omniscient style in just the first paragraph or the first couple of paragraphs to set the scene. But if that omniscient narration isn't continued through the rest of the novel, I really recommend bringing us into the POV character's mind from the start. There was also one line that I tripped over a little bit. The pit in her stomach was deepening so rapidly that any thought of intervening was soon lost in its endless abyss. I'm not sure what "its" is referring to here. Is it saying that the thought of interfering is getting lost in the abyss of the pit of her stomach? The imagery isn't really making sense. There also seems to be a fragment with the line, as she knew that once it rang 12, period. These obviously aren't huge issues, but they caught my eye. Now let's move on to the third P, the problem. There's clearly conflict established on this first page because Evelyn is the subject of heated, ongoing protests. My only note on this point is that the dialogue that we get, where we see what the protesters are chanting, an eye for an eye makes the world go blind, and people are not property, doesn't really give us any sense of what Evelyn could have done. I wonder if that could be a little more specific to give us a hint of what happened here. Of course, we're not going to have all the answers yet, but maybe we could have a little bit more of a breadcrumb. Did she kill someone? Did she just say something controversial? I do think this first page does a good job establishing a promise. We're going to learn what Evelyn did, why it led to these protests, and see the fallout of this conflict between Evelyn and the protesters. So all in all, I'd say this manuscript is pretty close to passing my first page test. By the way, if you want to submit your pages for critique in a future video, sign up to my newsletter Chapter Break. I will link it down below. I extend these submission opportunities to my premium subscribers, plus you'll get a ton of helpful writing and publishing resources from me delivered straight to your inbox. Here's the second manuscript, which is a thriller/mystery. Chapter 1, My Mom Died Once, Kinda. Wednesday, September 25th, 3:47 a.m. 3 texts from Mom. 2 from Richard, my stepfather. 1 from an unknown 305 number, Miami. There's also a voicemail from the same number. I almost delete it without listening. Almost. But something about the timestamp makes me pause. Who calls at 3:47 a.m. unless it's an emergency? This message is for Zolani Belgian, Detective Shara Eccles, Miami-Dade Police. Her voice carries Aisha Tyler's crisp confidence. No tremor, no emotion, just business. I'm calling regarding the 1992 cruise incident involving your father, Marco Liriano. We're officially reopening this investigation. I roll my eyes. My father's case. Here we go again. I've heard the same pitch from at least a dozen investigators and journalists, all convinced they found the missing piece that will finally crack it open. I've attempted to reach your mother, Cassandra Belgian, multiple times. Her publicist has denied all requests, stating she's said everything she intends to say through official channels. A pause. Frustration bleeds through her professional tone. I'm reaching out to you because families often share information privately that never makes it into public statements. Your mother may have mentioned details about that night or about the months leading up to it that she never disclosed. Another pause. Papers rustle. There are inconsistencies in the 1992 witness statements. I'm investigating a possible connection between the cruise incident and an earlier event, the gym fire at Northside High School in October 1991 that killed a student named Ayanna Rivers. Multiple survivors were present at both events, including your mother. Okay, let's apply my first page test, starting with the person. We have a first-person narrator named Zolani, but we actually know quite little about her specifically. The first page is almost entirely dominated by the dialogue of the voicemail that she receives, and we don't get much internal reflection from her at all. I do wish I learned just a little bit more about her, where she's living. What is her relationship with her mother? How is she reacting internally to all of these things that the investigator is saying and claiming about her family? How does she feel about her father and this cruise incident? We really get very little from Zolani, even though this is written in first person. Now let's look at the prose. The biggest thing here is that the dialogue needs to be properly formatted to have line breaks whenever we're starting a new line of dialogue. Right now, almost all of the dialogue is in this single paragraph, which is taking up more than half of the page. So we really need to break that up to make it more digestible and to make it easier for us to follow what's going on. This big block of text is just a bit difficult to parse. Regarding the dialogue, it feels to me like this voicemail is really being used as a device to info dump a lot of backstory about Zolani's family and what happened with this cruise incident. But it may be more effective to hear all of this directly from Zolani herself in her internal narration, because at least then we would get her own take on it. Maybe we do get the voicemail on the first page, but it's short. It's just the investigator saying, I'm investigating the cruise incident involving your father. Please give me a call back. It's urgent. And then that's what triggers Zolani to reflect on what she knows about this incident, how she feels about it, how it's impacted her relationships with her father and her mother, how her family has maybe fractured as a result. That would do double duty to deliver the important backstory, but also make us feel closer to Zolani, who is our narrator and presumably our protagonist. At a minimum, I want to see more of Zolani's reactions to what the investigator is saying if the author keeps this voicemail in its current form. What's her internal reaction to her claim that her mother might have more details about that night that she's withholding? Does she want to protect her mother, or does this make her not trust her mother? Let's move on to the problem. the author establishes a point of conflict with this investigation reopening. But, as I've discussed, we have no idea what this all means to Zolani, our narrator, our protagonist, or even really how she feels about it. We see her roll her eyes at one point, but that's about it. So is she brushing this off? The problem introduced in the opening page has to feel high stakes. It has to be something that is going to mean something to your main character. Otherwise, we won't care about it. To compare with the first story, Evelyn's livelihood was clearly deeply impacted by the protests that were happening. That made us care about the protests, right? But here, if anything, Zolani seems to be dismissing this voicemail, which undermines its impact. Finally, the promise. This first page promises that we'll learn more about the cruise incident, about her mother's experience of it, and how it potentially relates to this other incident that the investigator brings up. But again, it's not quite strong enough to pull us in because we don't know what any of this means to Zolani. So for me, this first page on its own wouldn't pass the test. Okay, let's look at the final manuscript today, which is a psychological thriller, Scalpel. Dr. Carver's voice sliced through the humming quiet of the operating room. He extended his gloved hand and felt the familiar weight of steel settle into it. The incision was clean. A thin red line bloomed beneath the blade. He handed the scalpel off without looking. Saw. A shrill whir filled the air, muffled only by the crack of bone. Retractor. The chest opened obediently. He couldn't recall the patient's name, but he would remember this heart. Pink, strained, and beautiful. The machine of flesh revealed in all its quiet glory. Dr. Carver paused, then slowly leaned in, his head tilted to the side. The beam from his headlamp swept across the nurse's chest and landed in her eyes. She flinched, shielding her face with her arm. He closed his eyes, stopped breathing, and listened. Thump, 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 thump. The sound was pure and raw, not like the ones fed through stethoscopes or sterile monitors. It pulsed through his body, making his fingers twitch with the urge to touch, but he didn't want to rush. He closed his eyes and imagined the steady heartbeat against his lips. What the hell is he? Shh. All right, let's go through our 4 criteria one last time, starting with the person. In the first paragraph, we are quickly introduced to Dr. Carver, who is a cardiac surgeon. We do get intriguing glimpses into his personality here. He seems extremely meticulous with the way that he's demanding the various tools from his team. He seems almost infatuated with the heart that he's working on, especially with the line, "He closed his eyes and imagined the steady heartbeat against his lips." It's almost a sensual tone. That makes us want to learn more about Dr. Carver's relationship with his work and maybe if something strange is going on here. Now let's look at the prose. The author has a spare but deliberate style, and I felt totally immersed in the scene. I love that the first verb they use to describe Dr. Carver's voice in the first paragraph is sliced, because of course he's a surgeon, and then he physically goes on to slice open the patient's chest. I also love the personification in the line, "The chest opened obediently." It gives us a sense of how Dr. Carver maybe views his patients as underneath him, just obeying to whatever he wants to do to them. Now let's look at the problem. Nothing is really going wrong with the surgery as far as we can tell, but there is tension baked into this scene. That comes from Dr. Carver's strange commentary on what he's doing, and this moment towards the end where his colleague asks, "What the hell is he?" as he's just closing his eyes and imagining the thump of the heart. The line, "He would remember this heart," and that moment where he imagines the heart against his lips indicate to us that he has some specific infatuation with this heart above all other hearts. And we want to unpack that. We also just generally want to know about the outcome of this surgery, if the patient survives or not. I do think this author establishes a promise. They promise that we'll learn more about Dr. Carver's relationship with his work, as well as the outcome of this specific patient, and why this particular heart has been so interesting to him. So this manuscript passes the first page test for me. What all of these novels did really well was open in a high-stakes moment and establish a problem. This creates conflict right from the start and will drive the story forward. I'd say there's the most room to develop on the character and craft side of things. Thank you so much to these authors for being so brave and so open to critique. I really hope it was helpful. For everyone else, remember to sign up to Chapter Break and join the premium tier if you'd like to submit your pages for a potential critique. So now that you know how to nail your opening page, you need to make sure the rest of your story doesn't fall apart. So watch this video where I reveal the 7 reasons your novel becomes boring and how to fix it. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.